completing the square is a way that we can solve quadratic equations without having to factor them. If they're not able to be factored, or if they're not factored already, we can use this technique called completing the square, and it does deal with creating perfect squares, where we take our polynomial, in this case x squared minus 16x, and I have a value here c that we want to find. That's the value where we complete the square, and I'll explain to you what that means. What we're going to do here is we're going to find a term that would make this a perfect square trinomial. And what we use is this formula over here. It's b divided by 2, and then you square that value. So b over 2 squared. Remember, this term is a, b, and c. So our b value in this case, if we say b divided by 2 squared, our b value is negative 16. We're going to divide that by 2, and we're going to square that value. So 16 divided by 2 is negative 8, squared is 64. So c, in this case, equals 64. Now let me show you what that means. If we have x squared minus 16x plus 64, we can factor this into two binomials of x minus 8 and x minus 8. Then when we want to solve this, we set them both equal to 0, and we get x equals 8 as our answer. Remember, we would set this x minus 8 equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0, which means x would equal 8. Our second example, we need to create that value for c here, because if we bring over 216 to this side of the equation, we're not going to be able to factor it. There's no common factors. We're not going to be able to factor it into two binomials. So we're going to create another term here by completing the square. Watch carefully. It's not difficult to do, but it is kind of a new concept. So once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. We have x squared plus 6x. We're going to leave a blank here, plus some number. That's what the number we're going to complete the square, equals 216. Now, completing the square, we're going to use b divided by 2 squared. 6 is b. So if we do 6 divided by 2 squared, we have 6 divided by 2, which is 3, squared, which is 9. So to complete the square, we're going to add 9 to this side of the equation. But of course, if we add 9 to the left side of the equation, we need to add 9 to the right side of the equation to keep it equal, to keep it an equation. So now all we've done to this equation is add 9 to both sides, which we can do, and nothing's changed. Now, let's go ahead and factor this out and try to solve and find out the answers for this, find the answers for this equation, for this quadratic equation. (216) plus 9 is 225. We factor this into two binomials. We get x plus 3, x plus 3. Now, this is x plus 3 times x plus 3. When they're the same, that means we have two factors, which means we can square it like that. Now, watch carefully. This is where we step into a little bit of new ground. To eliminate our exponent of 2 being squared, we take the square root of this side of the equation. Since we're doing it to the left, we also do it to the right. Now, all that does is eliminate this 2. And so we're left with x plus 3. that equals the square root of 225, which is 15. Now remember, in the previous lesson I told you when we take the square root of both sides and we're solving, we have to account for pluses or minuses, because x squared could be, if we said x squared equals 4, that could be 2 squared equals 4 or negative 2 equals 4. So we have to account for both the plus and the minus. So over here we say plus or minus 15, which means when we solve this equation we're going to get two answers. We have to solve for x plus 3 equals positive 15, and we have to solve for x plus 3 equals negative 15. When we do that, we get x equals 12 and x equals negative 18. And these are the two solutions for this quadratic equation, and we're able to solve and get that answer by completing the square. Our third example, we have a trinomial equaling 0. Well, if we took all our factors of 16 and tried to find a match that had a sum of negative 14, we would run into some problems because there aren't any. There's no set of factors that have a product of 16 that have a sum of negative 14. When we run into that problem, that's when we need to use completing the square. This is how we do it. We need to move the 16 to the right side of the equation by adding or subtracting 16 or adding negative 16 to each side. Now we need to complete the square here. Remember, it's b divided by 2 squared. So what is b? In this case, b is negative 14. So if I take negative 14 divided by 2 and square that, I get negative 14 divided by 2, which is negative 7, squared gives me 49. So now I can put 49. Remember, when I add 49 to the left side of the equation, don't forget to add it to the right. Alright, now let's factor this side. Now it should be pretty easy. And since we know we're completing a square, we're getting a perfect square, let's go ahead, instead of writing two binomials, let's just write one. We know they're both going to be the same. If we have a positive 49 and a negative 14, that means we're going to have x minus 7 times x minus 7, which means we have x minus 7 squared. Negative 16 plus positive 49, that gives us positive 33. Our next step, we need to take the square root of both sides to eliminate our exponent. Take the square root. Take the square root. And remember, our answer is going to be plus or minus the square root of 33. So we get x minus 7 equals plus or minus the square root of 33. Now, the square root of 33 is not going to give you a whole number. So we need to estimate. And this is going to be about 5.74. So we're going to say plus or minus 5.74. Now, when you're doing these problems on your own, just go ahead and find the square root on your calculator and round it to the nearest tenth, or you can round it to the nearest hundredth. I don't mind either way. But now we need to solve this. So we have, remember, we have plus or minus, which means we have two equations we need to deal with. We have x minus 7 equals positive 5.74, and we have x minus 7 equals negative 5.74. So when we solve these out, we're going to add 7 to both sides here, And one of our answers is x equals 12.74. It's positive. And our second answer, when we add positive 7 over here, will be x equals 1.26. It's also positive. So these are our two answers for this quadratic equation.